Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to the channel where we talk about economics and crypto and lots of other fun things. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the best of X for Tuesday, April 15th, 2025. If you like this content, smash up that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notification buttons as well. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive on into this. So chart number one, we are looking awfully rainbowy, but this is not the Bitcoin rainbow cycle topping indicator. If you remember this very famous tool from between the 2017 and 2021 bull runs, we saw the rainbow price chart, and this thing is not worth an ounce of your time or consideration. As far as I'm concerned, it is invalidated. And the purple section, I'm going to remind you, was added to make this seem relevant. It was added in 2022 when we deviated from the rainbow chart. The rainbow chart is absolute nonsense. This is not the rainbow chart, though. This is a model for this particular cycle. And so what do we see here? We are only left with the red option for the normal cycle. Wouldn't that be exciting? That's Bitcoin around $250,000 or so. In the fall of 2024, there were three main options for the normal cycle top structure. The first top is higher yellow, a high single top green, a late cycle top red. And so now the only option available, according to this model, is a late cycle top. But what happens if we do not hit that late cycle top model for this model at least? Well, here we go. Today we can conclude that only the third option, red, is available. If this option fails, the cycles will collapse. Ooh, that's really scary. This will put a lot of pressure on the power law and the minor baseline in the next crypto winter. Total 2 may not recover in this case, which will mark the end of crypto. So just to be clear, this is a Bitcoin price chart, but this is talking about the effects on altcoins. And I am telling you guys, the 4-year cycle, the models that have been built on this 4-year cycle theory, they are not really worth all that much consideration. So this is a new one. This is a new one that I've seen. And wouldn't it be great if we rallied from here to $250,000? But even if we did, I'm just going to reiterate to you guys that this is a facade, that really all we've been doing this entire time has been following monetary flow. And so, you know, as far as I'm concerned, death to power law. Now, death to minor baseline, I'm not so sure about that. But all those things, the stock to flow model, all of those things just need to be done away with. Bitcoin is in a new category, a new sphere, and it's still something that we can be very bullish on, but it's not something that will follow what we're supposed to think is going to follow. Like, and we will be proven, that will be proven right or wrong by the end of this year, by the end of 2025, which people are still holding out hope that the end of 2025 is going to be this peak of euphoria. Okay, well, we'll see. So some other things, you know, maybe there's a case here, but I don't think so. So same X poster here, the 525-day Bitcoin halving hack you can't ignore. Sell your Bitcoin on September 27th, 2025 and buy it back on October 23rd, 2026 with this crazy profitable strategy. Starting with just $1,000 10 years ago, one could have turned it into 77 Bitcoin worth $15.8 million by 2025. Here's the deal. Buy Bitcoin 525 days before a halving, sell 525 days after. Repeat it. That's it. That would be amazing. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that there is something built into the code that it must do these exact things. That would be just an absolute dream. And if it turns out that September 27th, 2025 is on or near the peak, then by all means, pay attention to this. This is how it's worked out in the past. But what I would add again is that this is how it's worked out in the past under different monetary conditions that we're in a low or no interest rate environment where there's a lot of money printing, then by all means, this is the way to go. We are in a bit of a different era. I think that September 27th of 2025 is going to be closer to a bottom than it is going to be to a top, and that will probably be closer to a top in October 23rd, 2026, but what do I know? All right, let's move on. Bitcoin's price orange compared to 4, 8, and 12 years ago, because we are still, by and large, the average Bitcoin holder is still of this mindset that we are to be comparing to 4, 8, and 12 years ago. And so we can see orange, it's close to where it was. It's close to where it was 8 and 12 years ago. So 2013 is the green section. We're pretty close there. We're well ahead of schedule for 12 years ago. What about for 8 years ago? Excuse me. Altcoins, not so much. I would love to see a chart with altcoins. And then, according to this, at least we got just way ahead of schedule in 2021. But by the end of 2021, we went way behind schedule. So, hey, is there something that we should hope for in this? Maybe there is something magical about Bitcoin. We shouldn't call it magic. Something mathematical about Bitcoin, that we are right along with where we've been in past cycles. And we have another 8.5 months to figure that out. I know where my vote is, and I'd be curious to know any of your votes. Let me know in the comment section of this video. And it's funny, I'm sharing a lot of hopefully bullish stuff, and please, for the love of God, let one of these end up working itself out. You might have seen this chart in a video that I posted, a short video talking about global M2. My friend Alvarez here says global M2 versus Bitcoin remains bullish. And this is another thing that can this please be how it plays itself out? If so, we don't have that long before things start moving up very aggressively. And if we're going to correlate, as we have been correlating over the last several months with M2, then what comes next is a move up to the $140,000 range area for Bitcoin over the summer, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, over the summer. And if we want to go by this, and if we can make a compelling argument that this is how it should be done, we can make a compelling argument looking at this chart. In the video that I posted, I shared different time periods where M2 went up and Bitcoin went down. And so wouldn't it be great if Bitcoin did not deviate from what we're seeing here with M2, and that this is a scenario where it's just going to go up with M2? We can cross our fingers, get on our knees and pray, and we will see a validation of this or an invalidation of this sometime soon. It's definitely something to keep your eyes on. It's definitely something that I am keeping my eyes on. It's not to be ignored, but there's a lot of metrics that would compare where we are right now with Bitcoin to the end, after the end of the bull run in 2021, in November of 2021, to that period right after that. And that's around the time that M2 continued to go up and Bitcoin's price went down. So just let's see how this goes. Let's let the market lead us. Let's follow this. And personally, I'm going to sell on any sign of weakness with this. But hey, some hopium. What else do we have here? We have that chart. We have MicroStrategy buys 3,459 more Bitcoin worth 285.8 million. If this is something that gets you excited, then stop. I'm sorry to sound too negative. You should know the drill by now. Michael Saylor, MicroStrategy, they buy lots and lots of tops. And that's something they actually kind of boast, that they're just going to continue to buy tops forever and hopefully hold on to their Bitcoin forever. Something interesting that I saw from Glassnode, a new metric that I've never seen before. Let me read it. Unlike traditional markets, crypto investors leave behavioral footprints on chain. Yeah, obviously. Glassnode's new metric, supply mapping, segments buyers and sellers based on specific stages of a token's life cycle and price at which they engage with the market. And so there's 5 cohorts here. There's first buy, which tend to be the people who sell and buy aggressively. And then there's momentum buyers, there's conviction buyers, there's profit takers, and there's loss sellers. And so really interesting things that you can see here. Conviction buyers have been buying heavy doses of Bitcoin over the last month and a half or so. They've cooled off a little bit lately, but they've been heavy buyers. First buyers have been heavy sellers. And this is typical of what happens when you see this much red. Well, let me just say this. I've seen this kind of price action before, this kind of cohort action before. And what I've come to see with Glassnode metrics is that the short-term holders, the first buyers, are the ones that are going to have the most short-term effect on the price of Bitcoin. So you see all this red here, that is a sign, as you know, as what you can see with the price chart, is that really if there was heavy green in a lot of other areas, but there was heavy red for first buyers, that would have probably more of a negative effect on the price of Bitcoin. And this is just generally how it plays itself out, is that the market is determined by short-term holders. So just really interesting chart. Check it out. Follow Glassnode. I've been following them for a while. I like their on-chain metrics. It's not everything. TA is far superior to on-chain networks. They have another chart here. Cumulative supply by cohort and price over time. This shouldn't be too surprising to see that the conviction buyers have a lot and the momentum buyers have a lot of Bitcoin. First buyers, it goes in swings, and then other and profit takers is very, very low. I'm a nerd for charts like this. Just keep it on your radar, Glassnode. Let's move on to Ethereum. So we have ETH dominance. Ethereum dominance has almost equaled old all-time lows, black. Generally, Ethereum dominance needs to hold this green area for a chance at reversal. Increasing ETH dominance would be highly beneficial for altcoin valuations over time. So we see the chart from Rect Capital here. We are back down to, believe it or not, we've been this low before with Ethereum dominance and on the Bitcoin Ethereum chart. Now we lose this level of support. You know, I mean, there's a lot of us who are saying that Ethereum looks really rough, that Ethereum is dead, or that it's dying, that it's AOL. And, you know, I don't know what to say about losing this level of support. I tend to think we will. And that's largely an outlook on altcoins. I mean, you can see what Rect Capital, what he said here, is that generally, Ethereum dominance needs to hold this green area for a chance at reversal. Increasing ETH dominance would be highly beneficial for altcoin valuations over time. I would say the opposite is true too. That if we're going to lose this, then this is really just a time to focus on Bitcoin and wait for monetary policy to align so that we can see a good run in altcoins, or even really a face melting run in altcoins. What do we need? We need much lower interest rates than what we have right now, and we need quantitative easing and, you know, money printing. I mean, we did see the chart with M2 money supply. We'll see how that has an effect, but really lower rates than what we have now is, and we're moving in the wrong direction, but that's a lot of what we need, at least in the United States. Moving on, Canada is readying spot Solana ETFs to launch this week after regulator gave green light to multiple issuers, including Purpose, Evolve, CI, and 3IQ. ETFs will include staking via TD. I don't know what TD is, but why am I highlighting this? Okay, so before the spot Bitcoin ETFs launched in the United States, the previous cycle, there were spot Bitcoin ETFs that launched in Canada, and I monitored the Purpose Bitcoin ETF all throughout that previous run, and it allowed me to make pretty spot on assessments as to what we would expect for the Bitcoin holdings for the spot Bitcoin ETFs in the United States. We saw the Purpose Bitcoin ETF immediately get up to about 25,000 Bitcoin in their holdings in early 2021. And then they got up to, you know, they grinded up to 35,000 in their holdings. And then they unwound some as people exited, but we saw their holdings not decrease all that much throughout the bear market. And I think that's a picture of what's to come with the spot Bitcoin ETFs in the United States. And so the reason why I bring this up is that this could be a canary in the coal mine for a future Solana ETF in the United States. We saw an Ethereum ETF, we saw several Ethereum ETFs launch in the United States and not do well. We have not even seen net positive flows mostly because of Grayscale selling off. So hopefully Solana would be a better positioned to take advantage of ETFs in the United States, especially with staking. But we'll see, because in the United States, at least, the SEC has recently come out saying that they're putting it on hold to allow for staking with the spot Ethereum ETFs. Again, this is just something to pay attention to. Purpose Bitcoin ETF, you can go to their website and see how much Bitcoin they hold. Same deal. Purpose Solana ETF, but also Evolve, CI, and 3IQ. Those are places just to see what kind of accumulation is happening. And in comparison, especially to Solana's inflation rate, it's going to be really interesting to see how this goes. But moving on, this is not exciting. Miles Deutscher points out of 27 tokens listed on Binance in 2025, we're only talking about 3.5 months. Only 3 are in the green. No wonder retail are quitting. And so this is just not, this is pretty ugly. You can see lots and lots of cryptos. And I'm just going to point out here, I barely know any of these cryptos. Wow. There's Trump Coin. There's AIXBT, AI meme coin. What is S? Sia coin. I don't really know. I've heard of Banana 31. I've heard of Mubarak, but man, they're really listing a lot of just garbage coins here. And so what do we make of this? It's just this has been a rough year. I don't need to even say that. It's been a rough year. This is evidence of it being a rough year. A lot of things that have worked out really well in the past are not working out well as of right now. Is that always going to be the case? Maybe there's a sense of there needs to be a flushing out of excess and of leverage before we can get back to a point where we can see the things that we're used to seeing doing well. For example, something getting listed on Binance has historically been very bullish for a particular crypto. And for something to be listed on Binance, we're talking about like Gun USDT. I don't know what Gun is. Is that Banana Gun? I don't know. But this was listed on March 31st. And as of right now, it has a negative 20% return. What should have happened with something like this is that it shot off and was up 100% or something like that. And then there was some profit taking, but it would still be green. Instead, we're seeing negative 20%, negative 25%, negative 57%. My goodness. So let's hope for greener days ahead. Moving on. The U.S. dollar index, the DXY, in yesterday's video, I talked about the U.S. dollar in comparison to the euro, and it looks as if the euro is ready to break out after a downtrend for 15 years. And what does that mean for the U.S. dollar? That means the weakness, most likely, for the U.S. dollar, and more of a need for risk-on assets, not risk-on assets, for things like Bitcoin, for things that will retain their value in comparison to the dollar, that there needs to be a heavy push in that direction. So here we go. The DXY chart is probably one of the most important charts globally. The DXY lost last week with the 101 yearly support area, 101 being the DXY score, for the first time since it broke above in April 2022. So since April 2022, the US dollar index has not been below 101. If this week we continue under 101 area, then we have 95, 96 area as next potential targets. P.S. Hopefully, we get soon a resolution of the tariffs, so this weakening of the dollar can be reflected on SP, Bitcoin, and other assets. But until then, I'm still in cautious mode until we get more clarity. Mr. Spread, you are a very good English speaker, but I'm assuming that English is not your first language. It's barely my first language, but good job. Keep up the good work. So confluence of supports at 95 to 96, and maybe this thesis does hold true. Maybe that as soon as there's some level of uncertainty removed from the markets, that we would see risk on assets start to reflect what we're seeing in the DXY. Because even if you look at this, when did Bitcoin rally? If you remember from 2021, early to 2021, late 2020, we saw the DXY plummet. And in that year, Bitcoin went from as low as $3,500 during the COVID crash up to $64,900. And then in 2017, same deal. 2017 to 2018, we saw a plummeting DXY and a rapidly advancing Bitcoin going from under $2,000 at the beginning of 2017 to almost $20,000, and then a massive alt season in early 2018. This is usually how this works, that we see the DXY go down pretty hard and risk on assets like Bitcoin and altcoins go up. That has not been the case over these last few months here. You know, the DXY peaked in December, and just like Bitcoin, you know, Bitcoin peaked at 108. I know on inauguration day it wicked a little bit higher. That was a scam wick. But the peak in December, with the peak in December, the DXY has gone down as well. And it's really interesting that that's how it's playing itself out. You know, my friend Devin says that somebody's lying, whether it's the stock market or the DXY, somebody is lying, and usually the DXY is the one that's telling the truth, which should communicate some advancement in risk on assets, but we're not seeing that right now. So very much worth keeping your eyes on with the DXY. But let's move on. Last week, on to the stock market, back to Eric Balchunas. I hope I pronounced your name right, Eric. Last week was the biggest ever for leveraged ETFs, more than double the norm. The crazy rallies, even if they are of the dead cat variety and are like chum in the water for the degens, more emboldened than ever to buy the dip and sell the rip, although much less money doing that. So buying the dip, I've heard lots and lots of from different sources that retail has been buying the dip aggressively. Retail. And when has retail ever been right? I'm a little bit nervous. I'm not terrified or anything like that. But the fact that retail is buying this dip, and retail is not only buying this dip, but they're doing it with leverage, is some cause for concern for the stock market. I'm on record saying that I think that the S&P and NASDAQ and Dow Jones all peaked in February, and that for the remainder of this year, we're going to start a new downtrend. It would make sense to me. This is some kind of confluence with that, in the sense that retail would be buying the dip right now, because whatever, you know, retail is always wrong. And you want to generally do the opposite of what retail is doing, especially if they're going to be doing this with leveraged ETFs. But let's move on. I want to close this video with an interesting glimpse, a fascinating glimpse into this trade war between China and the United States. I found these two threads. One is basically making the argument that China is going to kick our asses, and I'm talking about ours, I'm in the United States. And then another thread talking about how China's screwed and that the United States is gonna whoop China in this trade war. Really interesting perspectives, and they're both compelling arguments on both sides. But we'll start with China, because I want to start with the bad guys first. You know, the bad guys. I mean, I'm not a fan of China. But anyway, China is banning export of rare earth elements. You can see in this chart here, U.S. rare earth suppliers, 80% for China. So China has had a massive monopoly on REEs mining. It produces 70% of global REE mining. Refining controls 87% of global REE refining. It's supported by government subsidies, environmental trade-offs other countries have avoided. You know, you're not going to find many people with green thumbs in China. Good luck changing the tide on that. Other countries are waking up to this, trying to ramp up capacity, but they're still far behind. China knows the game and has used its REE advantage for geopolitical leverage. 2010, China halted REE exports to Japan over a territorial dispute. Global prices spiked 10x. China threatened export controls amid U.S. trade war in 2019. The U.S. only has one REE mine, Mountain Pass Mine in the Mojave Desert in California. Once the world's largest REE producer, it closed due to environmental issues and China's low-cost competition. It reopened in 2017 under MP Materials. Okay, Mountain Pass currently ships its output to China for refining. But there's a refining facility under development in Texas, Linus Rare Earths. Fortunately, the U.S. has national defense stockpile, adding REEs to reserves. Okay, so they do have some reserves. Ultimately, over-reliance on any foreign source is a risk, especially when it comes to the military, so restructuring supply chains is a must. The disagreement is over the method. This needs a thoughtful, detailed, targeted, long-term strategy. So China, based on the argument in this in this tweet thread, has certainly an advantage when it comes to something that's very much needed for production in the United States. Now, let's see a different perspective. What you're not hearing, the Chinese cannot replace the US market without it. The Chinese economy collapses. Here's why, a thread. Here's the shocking truth. China's entire economic miracle was built on one thing, being America's cheap manufacturing hub. But they forgot something crucial. The Chinese miracle, quote unquote, playbook was simple. Open markets to the West, offer dirt cheap labor, ignore safety standards, let Western companies rake in profits. This worked for decades, but China forgot something crucial. Others can do this too. Massive miscalculation. Beijing thought the American leaders they made rich would protect them forever. They believed these corporate puppet masters would never let the U.S. stand up to China. Wrong. Along came Donald Trump. The numbers don't lie. U.S. exports to China, 143 billion. Chinese imports to the United States, 438.9 billion. They flood our markets while closing or restricting their markets. But Trump said no more. Meanwhile, countries, this is the interesting part here, because China is not the only one that can do the things that they're doing, but we're, as of right now, the only one who's consuming at the rate that we're consuming. Meanwhile, countries like India, Vietnam, and Bangladesh are celebrating. They are ready to take China's place and open their markets to the U.S., and Trump is willing to deal. Here's what the media won't tell you. Chinese exporters are panicking, abandoning shipments mid-voyage, factory orders frozen, container volume down 90%, and this is just the beginning. China can't replace the U.S. market that made it rich. Reports are flooding in, factories shutting down, Amazon canceling orders, stores closing, warehouses overflowing. The house of cards is falling, but the media gives you nothing but Chinese propaganda. I'll say this. I used to, my primary business was an Amazon store for a time, and the Chinese sellers were miserable to compete against. I mean, they had advantages on Amazon that I just never had, but that's another story for another time. Crucial fact, America buys 3x more than Japan, China's next biggest customer. Without us, they're finished, and they were already on the ropes. Will this affect U.S. consumers? Sure, briefly. You might struggle to find cheap plastic junk for a few months, but other countries will step up, and trillions in new investment are flowing into America, while countless factories leave China. I'm going to be done with that. So two different perspectives, right? One is here's China's advantage, and another is here's the United States' advantage. I'm very curious to see over the long run what this does for countries like India and Vietnam and what was the other one? I don't remember, Cambodia, but we'll see. And if that would cause any kind of lasting effect. So lots and lots to process with all of this information, and be very interested to see how this goes moving forward. So at the moment that I'm making this video, Bitcoin is sitting at $84,936. It is trying to break to the upside. It has been an interesting battle between the bulls and the bears over the last few days. I have expressed some concern on the upside with the 200-day moving average that is sitting at 87.5, and then the upper end of the Bollinger Bands, 88.3. I'm not going to lie, I'm looking to open a short in the upper 87 area. Just for a scalp, short term, I think that that's going to be a local top maybe for this week, would be around the 88 range. I would also expect a back test of this trend line, but it's a good sign that we have seen a breakthrough of the trend line, and then we'll see where we go from there. Bitcoin dominance. It's not quite doing what we should hope for if we want any kind of excitement with altcoins soon. It is hanging above the 702 retrace. It spent 7 days there above the 702 retrace. And here's my mindset with Bitcoin and altcoins. With altcoins, if we're going to continue to see Bitcoin dominance rise, I'm going to mostly be exiting my short-term positions around the time that we see Bitcoin somewhere between $88,000 and $93,000. If we see Bitcoin's dominance drop all of a sudden, then personally for me, I'm saying it's game on, and I'll be holding those for several more months. So, okay, what else do we have here? You're not going to be surprised to hear this, but Fartcoin is trending on DexScan. We have Bitcoin, we have Ethereum at 1641. Decent week so far for Ethereum. XRP at 215. Binance 586. Solana 129.9. Tron 25.23. Dogecoin 1605. Cardano 63.91, Chainlink 12.95, Avalanche $20.41. As I said yesterday, we have a long way to go before any kind of major moves higher, before any even making up ground for all the ground that we've lost. But Bitcoin's the name of the game, and then Bitcoin dominance, we'll see where that goes. Hey, we're almost at 20 million Bitcoin in circulation, 19.85. So we're getting there. But anyway, that is all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed. Again, if you've made it this far and you like this content, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment in the comment section, all for the algorithm. And hey, join this channel as a member. We have a member live stream coming up later today. But anyway, that's all I have for today. Have a good rest of your week. I will see you in another video. Peace.